If you've played any of the Souls games or Bloodborne, then you probably have some idea how scaling works in Code Vein. Scaling is the amount of extra damage or defense you gain from your stats when using a weapon or Blood Veil. This scaling is represented by a letter, and S is the best. Then it's A, B, C, D, and E. If you see a plus, then it's slightly better than the standard version of the letter. The difference between Code Vein and the Soulsborne games is that there is no numeric value for each stat, but instead they are simply represented by the scaling itself. You can change your scaling by swapping weapons, blood veils, and blood codes. These things are all combined together to give you your total damage and defense values, but only your blood code scaling will be shown on your character screen, and this is the focal point from which all other stats are calculated. Keep in mind that both weapons and blood veils have their stat requirements, and if you don't meet them, you will be ineffective with them. In Code Vein, your blood code is the centerpiece from which your build will take shape. Each blood code has its own max HP, max Ichor, max stamina, max weight, mobility, balance, and of course stat scaling. However, for the purposes of this guide, we're only going to be taking a look at the scaling, since it's the most complex aspect. You can see the scaling of each blood code by scrolling through the blood codes in the blood code screen. Here you'll see what each blood code is good at based on the letter value assigned and how they compare to your currently equipped blood code. Not all blood codes are created equal, and generally speaking, blood codes found later in the game tend to be more powerful. They usually have better scaling and better general stats, so if you're using an early game blood code, consider swapping for something else. The scaling of each stat on your blood code screen will never change no matter what weapon or blood veil you equip, as neither of these things have any impact on it. That's not to say weapons and blood veils don't work with your blood code to create desired effects, it's just that you will not see these represented visually on the blood code screen itself. You will see their combined effects instead as more damage for your weapon, more damage for your drain attack, or higher dark or light gift values. Note that slotting passive gifts that increase your stats will be reflected within your blood code, and you can disable their effect when viewing blood codes if you don't want these to be factored into your equation. Weapons all have their individual scaling in Code Vein, and this works in tandem with your blood code to produce your overall damage. There are some behind-the-scenes calculation happening, but essentially your blood code scaling is being multiplied in some manner against the scaling of your weapon, and the result is the damage you will do. You'll do more or less damage by how closely you match the scaling of the weapon to the scaling of your blood code. Your blood veil does not impact this calculation in any way, so there is no need to worry about what blood veil to use if you are focusing only on this one aspect. If you're using a blood code like Atlas that has A+ in strength scaling, you're going to get the most benefit by using a weapon that has good strength scaling. Judgment Edge has an A in strength scaling, so when you use these two together you get drastically more damage. If you were using either a weapon that didn't have good strength scaling with Atlas, or you used a blood code with Judgment Edge that had poor strength scaling, you would end up with lackluster results. Always try to match your weapon's scaling to the best scaling of the blood code you are using. If you find a weapon you really like, switch your blood code to one that it would best benefit from. Note that scaling on weapons does not improve as you upgrade the weapon, but it does change permanently if you transform it into a different type. Unfortunately, you cannot see the scaling change when you do this, making it rather hard to make a decision about what would work best for you. However, this is something I expect to be patched relatively soon, and you can always use the wiki. Much like weapons, blood veils all have their own individual scaling that works together with your blood code to determine how much drain attack damage you do and how effective your dark and light gifts are. Blood veils have no impact on weapon damage, and when you see strength and dexterity scaling on them, it refers to damage scaling for drain attack, parries, and backstabs. If you're planning to play a backstab or parry build, then you'll want to look for a blood veil that has good strength or dexterity scaling. Blood veils also determine how effective your light and dark gifts are, and there are some blood veils that specialize in one type or the other, while others have a balance of the two or focus solely on drain attack damage. Because blood veils have no effect on weapon damage, you are free to choose whichever you wish, even if your blood code's scaling doesn't exactly line up with that of your blood veil. For example, if you're using the Prometheus blood code, which doesn't have particularly good willpower or mind scaling, C+ in both, you will still get benefit from using a blood veil with good scaling in either of these. All builds use gifts, so making them more powerful, even if less so than a build that is focused solely around gifts like a mage, can be beneficial. All dark and light gifts in Code Vein scale with their appropriate stat. That is to say, light gifts scale with mind and dark gifts scale with willpower. It makes no difference what the required stats are or whether there are more than one, only mind affects light gifts and willpower affects dark ones. The amount of scaling from spell to spell is difficult to calculate because we cannot see the damage values, so the only way to know how well a spell will perform with your setup is to test it out. Some spells may see a marked increase in damage from A to S, and some might not. Generally speaking, it's safe to assume that all spells have roughly the same scaling, and that their increase in damage is percentage based, meaning that higher damage spells will see more value from improved scaling because a larger number multiplied versus a percentage increase will yield a better return than a smaller one. The last thing I'm going to cover here is how defense and scaling work together. Defense is impacted primarily by your weapon and your Blood Veil. The defensive values on your weapon are only used when you block, and the values on your Blood Veil are used when you are struck while not blocking. They don't work together, but are used to calculate damage taken when blocking or not blocking. Vitality and Fortitude both have an impact on the defense values of your Blood Veil, but not your weapon. However, they are so small, it's barely worth mentioning. At level 100, the most increase I could get from having A scaling or better in either of these stats was +4, which translates to a 4% damage reduction. That is next to nothing. Additionally, from the testing that I did, I cannot make any sense of how they work, as sometimes using a blood code with lower scaling actually improved the defense of a Blood Veil. For these reasons, I strongly recommend not worrying about either Vitality or Fortitude, as they make no real impact in the defense of your character. I hope this guide has given some clarity on how scaling works in Code Vein, and be sure to check out our other guides for more direct help on character building.